Okay. Well, let's try the second part of Brian's story. So before we start, I just want to send a shout out to Andrew Hawk from Shadowhawk Realty. He's one of our regular donators that donates to Pistol. So good shout out, and reach out to Andrew because he's a good dude all around. Shadowhawk Realty, shadowhawkrealty.com. All right, so as we said before, Brian, on your last one, you got a little bit spun up, but there was a second part to your story that we said we were going to do part 2 of.
Right.
And for those of you watching at home, I'm out of the camera view, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. And now Veronica's in the view, which maybe we'll get more views because Veronica's in that chair and my ugly mug's over here. So just real quick, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Like you said, I'm Veronica. I was with Gilbert PD for just over 14 years before I left because of PTSD.
And this particular podcast is on the heels of Brian's original one. So I'll let you just kind of talk about real quick the call that you went on and where you were kind of at during that time frame. Sure. in that.
Sure. So I was on the JT Ready call as well. I was one of the first responders there. And my main role, essentially, after the house was cleared, was to attend to the 15-month-old that had been shot in the head.
Now, you say main role. Nobody fucking runs in for shit like that. Were you first on scene?
No, I was probably third or fourth, second, third, fourth, something like that.
So I think in your last podcast, Brian, you had said that people kept trying to fucking get in that house.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So either one of you, I guess it doesn't really matter, but I understand this, but for the people that aren't familiar with crime scenes and how it unfolds, how do you get to each victim and how do you land with the kid? How do you land with the baby?
Honestly, I think it was because I was the only female there and it just being a mom, and I think the guys that I was there with just know me as a mom, so I think that was just kind of like where I landed.
Like they were just kept stepping over, like,
yeah. I mean,
maybe Veronica will see it.
Once the house was cleared, like we kind of all just stood there for a brief second, like I think just in shock over the amount of bodies and everything that was happening, or that had happened. So I remember saying like, hey, we need to see if anybody is alive, and I don't know where anybody else went. I know me and one of the guys there went to the baby. And we started just looking for any signs of life with her.
And then, so at that time, I know when on your last podcast, Brian, you had said that you just remember all those fuckers just trying to keep coming in. Just to go back a little bit on your podcast, have you guys talked about this at all? Or is this the first time that you guys have actually talked about this fucking call at the same time?
At the same time, I mean, we've had, since we've found out, we've both have had issues because of it. Like we've had a couple conversations, but this is the first time really we're going into depth, I guess, about it.
Yeah.
So you've actually had the conversation about the call previous to this. The conversation, I mean,
within the last 6 months.
Right.
So fairly recent.
So 6 years after the incident is when we finally talked about it, and we're both retired.
Yeah.
Right.
So
now, the crime scene, obviously, Brian had talked about it being horrific and it just being a gnarly fucking scene.
Right.
And we'll get to you guys in the debriefing after, but did you, and I think I asked Brian this, I think we talked about it. Did you experience the onset of the acute stress like that same night? Was it almost immediate, or you didn't know until much later?
I don't think I even realized what it was then. I mean, it was just business, I think. Kind of just business, you know. From that scene, like after I left there, I went and had to watch the interview of the surviving victim. So I went and assisted detectives then, and then was told we had to sit around and wait for the schism to happen several hours later. Yeah. And so it was just business the entire night until we were able to leave. So no, I didn't think about any kind of stress. The only time anything, any part of it affected me in any way that was odd for me, I guess, was during that schism, listening to one of the guys talk And only because he made it very personal for me.
What, like personal, like he pointed you out in that SISM training or in that SISM debrief?
Yeah.
In a good way?
I think it was good for him to get it out. It wasn't so good for me. Basically, he just said that he had felt like solace in the fact that the baby had died with the mom, in the arms of a mom. And so, I mean, obviously everybody knew me as a mom. I had 3 little girls. I had a little boy that was probably 2 or 3 at the time. So it went from being very just business to me, you know, where I didn't relate any family or anything to it, to all of a sudden I was a mom who held the baby till she died, basically.
Yeah.
So.
And that's what he remembers.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so in this chaos, how long had each of you, I think, had more than 10 on respectively? You said 14 by this time, and you had 12, right?
I think I had 10 on.
10 on.
Mm-hmm.
So you were seasoned officers. It wasn't like something that you hadn't seen before.
Right.
We hadn't seen that before.
Not in the mass. Like I
in
was
that
like,
mass,
right,
in that mass
capacity.
casualty. But you had seen homicides before,
yeah.
shootings.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like outside of the scope to think that, you know, this. It was just the totality of everything that was in front of you at that time, right? Because you had multiple victims.
Right.
So how do you? I guess for me, and I don't want to harp on it too much, but I want to really put out there that, you know, you've got squad mates. Now, you weren't squad mates though, right? You just overlapped on shifts. But here you're in this scene, and when you're in this scene, you're, you know, what do you guys, are you looking at each other like, what the fuck are you going to do? Or what the fuck am I going to do? Or are you just going checking the boxes like Brian says? Like, are you just doing step by step these things and going forward?
Yeah, I think that's what it was for me. And to be honest, like at the time, if I look back, like I don't even remember where Brian was or any part of him being there. Like I just remember being down on the ground with another guy there, Dylan with the baby, because we thought we had a pulse on her. Like she seemed, I mean, we knew she was dead. I mean, she had brain matter like seeping out of her head. I was holding onto her head. Like we clearly knew that she was not going to survive. But we were still like, we had a pulse. We wanted something to happen. And I can remember looking up and seeing all the guys just kind of standing around watching. I don't remember him specifically being there or being one of the ones that I can still see there. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, when she's dealing with that specific scene, it's really easy to get tunnel vision because of how she was in the middle of the crime scene.
Right. Because the baby was at the doorway, right, just inside the doorway. To the north of her was her mom and her grandma. Behind me was JT Reddy and the male victim. And so I don't remember. I mean, like people were walking in. I don't even remember people trying to get in because I was just so focused on what I was doing. And then, like I said, just seeing all these guys around me, you know, kind of feeling like I had to do something to make this better.
Even though you couldn't do anything.
Right.
Yeah. So I've heard a lot. I'm not going to bash SISM, but I mean, we do get calls at Pistol for SISM and stuff like that.
Doing a
debrief.
For those who don't know what SISM is.
Yeah, I don't know what the acronym is. Do you know what it stands for?
It's like Critical Incident Stress Management
Yeah,
Team.
There you go. Alphabet soup again. Brian's making sure we don't use fucking acronyms. But so, whatever, a debrief, SISM, whatever fucking we say. You have this debrief, and what is it? I mean, is it just fucking paid overtime at this point? Because
yes,
not for me. I was still in my window.
Yeah. That's right.
But it was close. But it was.
What happens?
We were all in shock. We didn't want to be there. We were told to be there.
Right. It was, for me, it was probably happened 5 hours after my shift should have been over and done with, that I had to stay and wait for this, you know, like I just wanted to go home. Like I had to be back to work the next morning at 5. So at 8 or 9 o'clock at night when this is happening, like it's really just a matter of can everyone.
It was an inconvenience to do the fucking SISM.
Oh yeah, and it was, and for me, like I've been a part of a few of them, and I never got anything out of them. Like it was just a waste of time. I thought. I mean, maybe it helped some people, but for me, it was really just like one of those check boxes. You have to go. You have to participate. You have to sit there and listen to people and then pass on your turn to let the next person go.
Is that Brian smiling? What?
That's exactly what
Did
happens.
you pass or what?
I think I did.
Yeah.
No, I think I shared that I was angry.
Angry, I think.
I was really angry, and I told everyone how angry I was because it was like I've never been so angry. Like I said in the last podcast, I wanted to kill a dead guy. That's how angry I was, and so I shared that, but.
Which I think was good because then it allowed other people to acknowledge that they were angry. Because I think that's the one thing that everybody besides the one guy who shared what he thought about me, everybody else there after that was like, oh yeah, I was angry. And that became a little bit of a topic of conversation during that time, was just everyone talking about how angry they were that this person did this. And there was history at that home. So we had taken reports there. You know, so I think there was anger in that. Could we have prevented this from happening? Why the fuck didn't she leave at some point? Like knowing she had these problems with him before, like why now her whole family is gone and here we are like dealing with it.
You're like, I'm fucking 7 hours over my shift now, motherfuckers. And you got me here talking about, but I've been involved in those schisms. And I think for me, like somebody says the word angry and that's like an easy way out. You're like, oh, I'm angry too. Yeah. Can I go home now?
Oh, for sure.
I'm angry. Right? Nobody says they're sad.
Right.
Nobody says that they're not feeling, like something's wrong.
Right.
They're just looking to be part of the rest of the crew. Like, oh, Brian said he's angry, so I'm angry. That sounds like a good, reasonable thing to say.
Right.
But I don't think we even had time to even sort out our feelings. It didn't happen to me until I closed my eyes that night. And then I just relived the incident. And then I had time to actually sort out what real feelings
process
were there.
Everything.
Yeah, and so that meeting wasn't productive. That was one of the reasons is we were still in shock. We had no idea what we had just seen, and we were. I mean, it was new for all of us.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't like anything we'd ever seen.
So we know that Brian is struggling almost immediately. You're just struggling to get home to go to sleep, and
I had to come back to work that next morning and.
So what, like during that time, like did that happen to you that Brian's talking about? Like, did you go to sleep and?
No, I went home and I did notice when I got home, my little guy was a small little person at the time, and he was fat and I remember, coming in the house and touching him, and I didn't like the way that it felt because. So the baby that I had held, she was still hot, she was very clammy. She was fatty, like a 15-month-old baby, And so I was able to relate that feeling of touching her when I touched my own kid that night. And I didn't like the way that it felt, but I don't think that I really thought much more. I just was like, okay, well, I'm just not going to touch him right now. Like, I'm just going to avoid that feeling. Whatever that was, I don't like it, and I'm not going to deal with it. And then I went back to work the next day. And I mean, during work, like the next day, I was, me and another officer that was also on scene, like we talked, and we didn't talk about feelings though. We were both like annoyed with the new calls that we were taking that next day because of the irrelevance, I guess, of them compared to what we had just seen. But we didn't even share like feelings or anything like that. Like it wasn't like, oh, that was a fucked up scene, like I didn't like that. We didn't talk about that at all.
It's funny that you say that because now, I mean, looking back, I mean, clearly we're all fucked up and have doctors and shit, and I'm listening to Veronica talk, and I'm like, that's like a fucking clue when you're thinking to yourself, why are we taking this fucking shoplift call when fucking 5 people just got killed and I was holding a fucking baby the other day. And so you're in my mind, and this is just my opinion, you're fucked up.
Yeah.
At that point, you're fucked up. You're just not calling a spade a spade. You're just like,
right.
I'm good. Hey, why are we taking this fucking stupid call?
Right.
Because, and so how often would you see Brian after that? Because you were a day shift princess. Because who the fuck works day shift?
Moms with lots of kids. I don't know. Like, we probably saw each other in passing after his briefing. Like, he was coming on, I was leaving. But I think there might even have been a time that you came to Team 1 with me, or Team 11, one of the day shift teams. Did you come to that or fill in or
I don't
something?
think so. Maybe, I don't know. I mean,
thought
we
there
always saw each other,
right?
but it wasn't something we didn't. I mean, you don't talk about your feelings anyway, and you're certainly not going to go pull someone aside, taking a chance that they might feel the same way.
Right. Oh,
and if they
sure.
don't, you just put yourself out there.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure because you passed all the other officers on scene, but we'll just limit it to you and Brian. Now, Brian knows he's fucked up at this time. And I think anybody would be fucked up. Like you said, the next day you're bitching and complaining about the petty shit you had to deal with.
Right.
And it's almost like a cry for help. And my thought is you're like, why am I even here now when I was 24 hours ago I was holding this baby.
Right.
And so are you, I mean, are either of you even thinking, how is she not fucked up by this? Or are you thinking, how is he not fucked up by this? Or
I don't know what he was thinking, but like I never, no, I just was like, just another day. Like you just have to deal with it and move on and take the next stupid call that's going to come in that's irrelevant at this point, you know, but you're doing it because someone's calling and a dispatcher's putting it in and sending you.
Yeah.
And I don't even know that I knew that I was messed up, because I know now looking back, because I could see the change, but at the time it was just like any other hard call. You just
right,
emotions pop up and you deal with them for a couple days and then you shove them back down. And so I knew I was angry, and I knew that I could see my daughter who would remind me of the scene I was on, and I just thought, oh, that sucks.
right.
I didn't think of it as, man, I'm really messed up, I
Right.
should go get some professional help. I didn't think like that, because you're not trained to do that. You're trained to be macho and okay all the time, no matter what.
Yep.
So that's where I was at.
So were you ever thinking to yourself, like, you know, that did anyone say at any time, even in the SISM, like, man, that was a fucked up scene? Like, aside from the anger, nobody said, nah, that's fucked up.
We didn't want to be there.
Right.
So we kept our mouths shut.
So looking back, being hindsight 2020, 3 people fucked up in a room. When you look back, do you think I should have said something out loud? Would it have mattered, do you think? Because I personally don't think SISM would have mattered fucking one bit.
The people that we were talking to, no. Like, I don't think there was anybody in that room that would have known if we had said, fuck, I'm fucked up, can you help me? They would not have had a clue what to do. Like, I think they're also filling their own checkbox. Like, hey, we came here, we said, hey, how's everyone? Gave everyone a chance to talk, and we're done. Good, we did our job. Like, I don't think they would have had a clue. And
I think that's a good point, because now that I watch the media, that's what departments are saying. Oh, we have things in place for that. Yeah. So in this case, they had something in place for you guys, but you're saying it didn't even it wouldn't have mattered anyways, right?
It was a checkbox. It wasn't. Right. It wasn't intentional. It was obligatory.
Right.
And when she reached out to get help, she's told me about this, is she ran into certain issues with getting help, which made it hard for her to trust what was happening at the time. I don't know if you want to share that.
Are you talking about the first time with JT Reddy's thing? So
before you don't hold that for just 1 second, Brian, you said in the last, so your onset was relatively quick, right? From you said the intrusive thoughts or the bad thoughts.
Yeah, I was having stuff like that, but like I said, I didn't recognize it as a symptom of acute stress or even PTSD. I just thought of it as, it sucked and I'm going to deal with it. I didn't think, it wasn't, like I said last podcast, it wasn't until about 6 months later that I realized, hey, this is affecting my home life, and it's no longer just a reminder anymore. It's with me, and it's affecting my home, and I need to get help because I couldn't push it down. No matter how hard I tried, it wouldn't go away. Right. And so that's when I really, when it was starting to affect my home life, and I already saw it affecting my work life, but I didn't say anything.
So about 6 months. Now that gets us to where we were going to ask you that question.
So that following week, my supervisor was not working the week that the homicides happened. She came back to work Monday, and she had been in a critical incident many years before, and so she heard about obviously that call that our whole team was on essentially. And she, I think, individually pulled us aside, like asked to meet up with us. And I remember meeting up with her. And during that, she was just like, hey, so that was kind of shitty. Like, are you okay? How are you doing? And I think, I obviously said something to her, probably that I wasn't sleeping well or something, for her to say, well, maybe you need to talk to somebody. Maybe you should go see somebody. And she's kind of the one that threw it out there. And I knew another guy on my team was struggling too. So
with the same incident,
right? Because we were both the angry officers. We were probably two of the most positive officers at one point. And that next day, we were both very angry and kind of hasty towards some of our clients at the time. Because
so you knew. So even now, I mean, you're saying that it was almost the next day.
Oh yeah,
that you noticed
a change.
In
right.
your demeanor.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so it was that following week that my supervisor told somebody, probably her supervisor, that she had a couple officers that needed to see somebody or something, and that's kind of where we started.
And then what happened from there?
So we had to go see our legal. What would she?
Legal advisor.
Yeah, the legal advisor.
See a legal advisor
That's part of the problem.
What the fuck? Well, how does that even? What did they tell you?
We went to see the legal advisor, and that's where we asked to see if we could go see somebody, like how we go about doing this. And so we were told that the PD did not want us to file a workers' comp claim for it. That the PD was going to take care of it for us.
That's some fucked up shit.
And so they made calls, I guess, probably to other agencies, like, hey, where do you guys send your people to? And so they scheduled appointments for us, and we went in to meet with this person. And then meanwhile, I know like we were getting calls because initially they did file a workers' comp claim, and then they told us, no, we're going to go ahead and take care of it for you. So if workers' comp tries to get a hold of you, we need you guys to not take their calls, not speak to them. And they actually made us sign a document saying we will not pursue this with workers' comp because the PD is going to take care of us.
That's fucked up.
Well, that's the thing, is she didn't know any better. She
Right.
just thought, I need help, and this is the way it works.
Well, but like Tanya says, we're rule followers. We think that the fucking department's going to take care of us. And this is the first time I'm hearing this, so it's fucking a little agitated. I'm going to pour myself some fucking more whiskey. Let me sign this piece of paper without a fucking lawyer present. But I think it's kind of...
I had a lawyer. I had the PD lawyer who was telling me, hey, this is what you need to do.
Yeah. And it's basically those fucks trying to cover their asses because they don't want you to fucking go out on medical retirement or get the help that you need. And I think it's fucking bullshit that a department would act... And I know it happens. I'm not saying any department's better than another. But to hear that shit, that's some fucked up shit. Like, hey, don't worry about it, That's like the fucking wolf in the chicken coop, Hey, I got you covered. No wolf's gonna get you.
And at the time, I really didn't think anything. Like, to me, like they had my back. They were handling everything. However many times you need to go see her, whatever you need, we've got it. We're taking care of it.
Did they honor that?
They did. I mean, I only went 2 or 3 times because I got nothing out of it.
What happened? What happened with that girl?
It was the doctor. You know who?
This is so fucking bad.
The doctor who's not good at her job.
Yeah.
That's who she went to see.
When I'm 80 and I don't give a fuck, I'm going to dime out every goddamn piece of shit I know. But anyways, so what happens when you go there?
I went in, and I would say my first meeting with her was just discussing my entire life prior to the shooting. My next meeting was essentially the same. Like, I didn't feel like... It was pointless. I was driving an hour and a half to get to her office and to do nothing. Like, I was getting nothing from it. It was easier for me to just say, deal with it, suck it up, deal with it, put it away, move on, because you have shit to do, than to sit there and go and feel like I'm just wasting my time for nothing. Like, there was nothing.
Now, this is the doctor that the department said they were going to take care of you with, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So they send you to this doctor, and you're getting nothing fucking out of this, which...
Right.
There's 3 of us now that are fucking in this room who've dealt with this fucking doctor and reasonably more fucked up because we dealt with her. So I'm still fucking appalled at the fact that your fucking department tells you, don't worry about work comp, ignore it, and we'll take care of you.
Right.
And so when you go there, and it's not working,
I'm just done. Like that was my option to go see her, and she was going to make things better, and I wasn't getting anything out of seeing her, so I was just done. Like, it was time to move on, basically.
So now during this time frame, you're seeing someone. Brian's not, you're not, but you're fucked up, and you're fucked up, and you're working in the same town.
Right.
It's not like it's a fucking metropolis.
Right.
How many... So it's a small fucking town. How are you... And maybe I'll just ask Brian because it's easier from a guy's perspective. Are you just sucking it up at this point and just fucking eating crow? Like, I'll just fucking deal with it?
Yeah, that's what we did.
Around everyone that was on that call.
Well, yeah, no one wanted to talk about it. And I did have someone who I was sharing feelings with, which is the same person she's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So
hold on. So let me get this straight. Yeah. So let me get this straight. You've got a middleman who knows that two people are fucked up and never connects the two.
He was messed up. He was there too.
Yeah, he went to the doctor the same time I did.
I know, but he knows. Okay, so the middleman knows Veronica's fucked up.
Right.
The middleman knows Brian's fucked up, but never tells Brian that Veronica's fucked up, and Veronica never tells Veronica.
I knew she was having issues. That's why I knew that I could get help. Because I said, hey, this is still bothering me. And he's like, well, Veronica went and got help, and I'm going to get help. And the PD's making sure that happens. So I knew she had issues. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that she wanted help.
Did you reach out to her?
What was I going to say?
I don't know. I'm just saying, if you know your partner's fucked up.
But that's a good point that he brings up. Like, I think that's part of the biggest problem we have is we don't know what to say. Yeah. Like, we're good at telling citizens how to handle things, that everything's going to be okay, how to deal, what they need to do, what steps to follow. Like, we've got that down pat. But to talk to each other, like, what do you say? Because Brian's not the first person that left our PD with PTSD problems. Several people, and I had never reached out to anybody because what do you say? Like, I don't know. And I think I saw that happen with me when I started having problems. All of a sudden, no one knew what to say around me. No one knew how to act around me. Like, you know.
Well, I think if they didn't have the acute stress or PTSD, I get it. But Brian's fucking kind of messed up, and you're messed up. But
neither of us had made it out of the deep end at that point. Right. So how am I going to offer her advice when I can't even figure out my own stuff?
Well, I don't know that I'm saying advice wise. I'm just saying,
But what do you say?
I don't know. That's the fucking problem.
All you're doing is saying, "Hey, that call messed me up too."
But
I got nothing. Like, what do we say? I think that's part of why we do what we do with Pistol.
Right.
And I'm hoping what this podcast will bring is ideas of people saying, what the fuck do you say? My thought is you approach someone and say, hey, I hear you're having problems with this call. Well, so am I. But then again, you run the risk of the other person saying, get the fuck out of my business and stay the fuck out of my business.
Right.
And I guess maybe that's where the whole thin blue line comes in. Like, you wouldn't say that if you fucking got shot. Like, you wouldn't say, this is my business, stay the fuck out of my business. Everybody was on that scene. It was a fuck scene. And you've got three officers collectively that know you're all fucked up from this call, and yet you have no fucking idea what to say to each other.
Right. And there was others. I worked with other officers that were on my squad that were having major issues that I didn't even find out about till years later. Like, they were not even in patrol anymore years later, and I found out that they were like on leave or something, you know, where I was like, what the fuck? Because of that? Like, I had no clue that he was having problems still, you know, or at all.
So we're down the road, same call, two different roads. You're getting help. You haven't got help. Right? What happens to you when you go for this nutcase doctor, whatever the fuck she was, and you decide, hey, I'm done, right? Is that what you? So what happens?
I basically just had to tell her I was better, like so that I could be done with her, and she could tell the department I was okay and good to work and stuff. So I just said, you know what, like, I think I'm good. I'm ready to move forward and whatever. And that was it.
And what happened in your home life?
At the time, I actually was able to compartmentalize it, put it away, and and avoid the things basically that were going to cause me any distress with it. So I was really lucky. For 3 years after that, I didn't have to see another dead baby. I didn't deal with things. I didn't go to that neighborhood. Like, I didn't take calls for service. I had my teammates that did know something was not right or that I wouldn't be okay there. They would take the calls in that neighborhood, so I didn't have to. Things like that. So I was really fortunate to be able to avoid it for a really long time. I didn't start having issues again for about 3 years later, after I saw another department contracted psychologist who fucked me up. So yeah.
And so at any time, so 3 years, and I'm guessing 3 years in, now you're 3 years into your struggles.
You were already gone by the time.
I was already gone.
He was already gone.
As you're struggling with this, clearly we know how fucking police departments are. It's like a fucking high school. So the rumor mills are out. Did you know Brian was leaving?
No, I knew when Brian was gone that I probably didn't know anything until you were actually about to retire or retired.
Most people didn't know because I just didn't show up to work again.
Yeah.
And so people nothing happens until they send out the email saying he's no longer
employed.
Yeah. So
severed ties.
So no one really knew.
So during this time, are you hearing anything rumor wise? Is it because of the call? Are more people dropping out like Brian? I mean,
I had heard by that point, by the time, within that 3 years or whatever, I had heard of a few people who were having problems because of the call. Some were questionable. Some people who weren't even there, that were kind of questionable, weren't even working and having problems from it. Like, that was more frustrating, knowing that, I had been there and I was like, I had to survive essentially, and these people were not, and they were having problems. So that was a little frustrating. But there was by the time Brian left, and I don't know if it was when you left or how many people before you or after you, they used to walk around, officers would walk around saying, oh, so-and-so has the SADS. That's what it was called. Did you know that?
No.
So it was called the SADS. So that's how other officers talked about officers who were leaving for PTSD or, unknown reasons.
So that was a derogatory term.
Yeah.
Saying that I was sad and I left.
Yeah. I don't know that it was specific to you, but I know that
just other people who.
Right. People who were leaving for like
questionable
I said,
reasons.
Right. For mental health, emotional type reasons. It was called the SADS because there were several officers by that point. By the time it happened to me, several officers who had left, who had medically retired, or some that were just still trying to stay at work. But were gone for long periods of time. And that was the term that people use. Like, oh, so-and-so has the SADS. Like when you'd say like, hey, like if we were talking about you or whatever, like, hey, where's Brian? We haven't seen him in forever. Oh, he's got the SADS, and everybody knew like what it meant. And so that was just like the end of the talk. Like, oh, that's just not something nobody else, we don't want to talk about it besides saying it's sad.
And that's the sad thing is that feeds the culture of not getting help and not saying you need help and not reaching out for help because you have that high school mentality or the officers that eat their own and they're like rabid dogs or piranhas, they see someone who might need help and instead of offering a hand up, they go after them and they tease them or belittle them or whatever. And you know what? That's not the way it should be.
Right.
And it's unfortunate. And it is also unfortunate that maybe some of those people really did have the SADS and other people really did have PTSD. And so, and I'm not here to judge anyone. And as soon as I left, I didn't know anything about anyone. So all I knew is that I was screwed up and I wanted help and I didn't get the right help. And I lost my career because of it. So that's the biggest thing for me is I don't like seeing officers eat their own. I would like to see something different. We talk about, well, would I said something different in CISM? Yeah, I would have. If I was still working, would I reach out to guys that I can clearly see have problems? Yeah, I would do that. Because you know what? I've seen what it did to my life, and I don't want that to ever happen to anyone else. And so I think that it's important for anyone who's in any type of peer support role in the police department, they need to have some sort of experience, personal experience with PTSD or have some sort of training.
Yeah.
But if you don't know what it is, how can you help people?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, if Veronica's the first person to go ask for help and the help she gets is shit, the last thing I'm going to do is reach out to Veronica to find out, because I already know it was shit, because she's probably already said it, and she's back at work and everything's fine because you've told the doctor, I'm good. Can I just go back to work? Maybe that's just I mean, for me, I like to believe that if you reach out to the right people, which are suffering, and you just honest and you say, yeah, I'm fucked up too. The SADS thing I never heard about. Like, I never heard that in my department, was never the SADS. Mm-hmm. I think our department was a little bit better than that. And we would just say, he's not okay from that call, which we were good with. Like, we said, no, that's totally cool. That's a fucked up call. But you know, to be around that many people in that small of a department and then just be like, yeah, I'm just going to kind of go out the back door and be left alone. And for you, I'll ask you this, because I know Brian wanted to talk about it, but how they just treated you after all this happened.
So are you talking about after I saw Shelly, my second time when I finally was fucked up? So in 2015, we had an officer-involved shooting, and I was one of the first responders to a shooting. And my role there was just to help the bad guy. You know, there was like probably 6 of us there rendering aid to him. He had been shot by the officer. At that point, just prior to that, our department had a new policy, and the new policy was that they would contract with a psychologist to come in for every critical incident, regardless. I mean, probably because we had several officers leave the department at that point. So that was their new
policy.
Right. So
who was the doctor? Don't say the same fucking doctor that you saw.
No.
Okay.
Mine was
that's okay.
different one. But so the group of people that I was on that call with, we were the first group to have to see this doctor. And it was the next day, and we could not return to work until we saw her. So the next day we went in, and I saw her, and I told her it was a good day for cops. Like, officer went home, bad guy unfortunately is deceased, but the officer went home. So I didn't have any symptoms that were negative from being on that call. Like, it was a long, hot day, middle of August. I was tired. Like, I had those symptoms, but I wasn't like feeling any kind of stress or anything related to the actual call. And so that's what I told her. And so what she asked me then was, had I ever seen another psychologist for police related incidents? And so I told her about the JT Redding call. I just said, yeah, 3 years ago, you know, I had to go see a psychologist because of this mass homicide I was on. And she was like, oh, cool. Well, let's do this thing. And so she handed me an iPad. And on the iPad was just a blue ball in the center of the iPad. And she's like, hey, tell me about this call. No, not tell me. She's like, I want you to think about that call and just stare at this, the blue ball as it goes across the scene or the screen. And so I was like, okay, well, that's kind of, I don't like it, pointless, but I have to do like what she's telling me.
Do the checkbox to get back to the black and white.
And so, so I do that. And at first I had nothing from it. Like, it seemed pointless to me. Like, I didn't know what I was doing with it because I wasn't having issues from JT Redding anymore. I probably was, but I wasn't like having like regular symptoms. It wasn't affecting my life. I was able to avoid anything that was going to cause me any issues with it. So I wasn't having any problems at all. And then she said, hey, I want you to come back on Friday so we can talk a little bit more about this. And I was like, okay, whatever. You know, I'm getting paid to come in. Came in Friday.
Dodging calls on day shift.
So I went in, and it was the same thing. She was like, hey, this is all I want you to do is just look at this blue ball, follow it with just your eyes, and think about this call. And so I did that, and there was really no conversation between us. Like, I gave her essentially just the basics of the call. You know, a guy comes in, kills his girlfriend, kills her daughter, kills the granddaughter, kills the fiance, kills himself. I took care of the baby. Like, that was as much information as I gave her. And she was really interested in it. Like that's what looking back, like I can see like she was just so interested in the call. I don't know. And so
was she interested like a looky-loo, or was she interested as a doctor?
I almost feel like more like the looky-loo. Like this was a big thing for her.
Like she was a badge bunny, bro. She just wanted to know the story.
Well, and then because there were times like when I met with her that she said, well, how can I get other officers to come in and do this? And I was like, oh yeah, that'll never happen. Like, I don't even know why I'm here talking to you other than you keep telling me to come in. But guy officers are not going to come in and share their feelings about this. Like, that's just not going to happen. And so anyways, I saw her she asked me to come back the following week again. And so, and nothing happened to me as a result of looking at this point. Like, it was literally, I was just doing what I had to do. Like, this doctor that the PD's got at the PD, like is saying, come in on this day and time. So I'm showing up.
So how did that make you feel about professional help at that point? After seeing the first one who was ineffective and now you're dealing with this one?
She was very unprofessional, to say the least. Like, everything about her, like, as I sat there and had to follow this ball, she was sitting like where you are, and she was on her phone. Like, I could hear the swoosh of emails and texts. Like, she wasn't even, there was no engagement between us. It was really just, it was pointless to be there.
So by that point, I'm guessing if she's not engaged, you're not engaged in.
Right. And I didn't know what I was doing. Like, she didn't say, hey, this is EMDR. This is what might happen. Her only explanation about it was sometimes when you're involved in critical incidents, your memories will get stored in the wrong part of the brain. And so all this is going to do is make those memories, if there's any negative memories from that, put them where they need to go, and then you'll be fine. And you'll never have to worry about, like, down the road having any problems with this. And so that was literally all it was. She didn't say what it was called, what the process was, what might happen, any negative effects of it, like nothing. And so on my third visit with her, in the middle of this, all of a sudden, like, I had remembered that call, and the only way I remembered it was just like little shots of the scene.
Which call?
The JT Ready
the
call.
Original.
That was the one she wanted me to focus on all the time. Like, that was the only thing she had, I guess, that I had in my bag that she could pull to use, right? Yeah. And so I had always just remembered it like just screenshots, I guess. And so in the middle of looking at this iPad and following the ball on it, all of a sudden, like, shit just started happening in my head. Like, it was live. Like, I was there again. I could hear people, all the guys that I was watching, all the officers. I could hear the scared, whatever was happening with them. I could hear it in their voice. And I started having, like, I didn't know at the time what was happening, but essentially I was having like an anxiety attack. Because my heart started racing. I started getting like all sweaty and just uncomfortable, and not like, something wasn't right. My breathing was all fucked up, and she noticed, and she was like, hey, let's stop for a second. What's going on? And I told her just that, and she was like, oh, totally normal. Just keep doing it. That's what's supposed to happen.
It's working. It's totally working right now.
Right. And so for another half an hour,
oh
I'm sitting there
my God,
up, like losing my shit. Like, what's happening? Staring at this stupid thing. And she's like, no, that's right. That's good. That's good. Keep doing that. And then she tells me, hey, so just get a lot of rest this weekend, because it's going to feel like you had a really good workout. That's what it'll feel like. You'll feel just tired from a workout. So just get a rest, and I'll see you next week, and all will be good. Oh my God. I took like just a nosedive into hell.
Nothing like a fucking workout.
Right.
EMDR is a motherfucker, man.
It was the worst. So I've never been the same since then. I fucked up every day since then.
So you're working at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what ends up happening from that point forward?
I continued to see her. I saw her the next week, and I told her. So I just became really like, all of a sudden I was, I just isolated. I was angry at the world. I hated everything. I don't know. I didn't know at the time, like, that I was having depression or anything. Like, I just didn't care about anything. I didn't care about anyone. Like, that all happened like that fast. The first thing, besides the obvious anxiety symptoms I was having, I started having really bad headaches, my brain always felt like it was just sitting in a pot of boiling water and I couldn't make it stop. Like it just was killing me. And so that was the biggest symptom I had. And then like the depression and isolation and the anger and then the like hypervigilance. Like I was having nightmares now. I couldn't sleep anymore. Like all these things happen. And I go in the following week and I tell her like, I don't know what that shit was, but I'm fucked up now. Like I have never felt this way. This has never happened to me. I don't know what it is, but I'm not okay. And she continued to tell me like it was normal. She told me I should go see my primary care doctor because I might just be having normal heart problems, and that might be what I was experiencing. Yeah, that's standard.
Normal heart problems. How old are you at the time?
I was probably 39.
Yeah, sure.
38, 39, yeah. So, that was the first time I filled out a workers' comp claim to go see my primary care doctor in case my heart was about to blow up. So I did that and then immediately was essentially denied workers' comp claim.
Shocking. Shocking. Of course. Why would they not? Why would they accept it?
Right. But then she decided she could no longer see me and just essentially I was just left to be like fucked up basically. So she started canceling appointments. She'd say, "Oh, we can't use that office." All of a sudden I can't use that office anymore. So let's reschedule for next week and I'll try to get a different office. And then the next week she'd be like, "Oh, I fell and hurt my ankle. I can't go anywhere this week. Let's reschedule for next week." And it was something like that for several weeks. I mean, one time she even offered to come to my house. Like
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, she was like, "You want to just do an appointment at your house?" And I was like, "Yeah, no. This is
no,
like I don't even know what's happening to me. I don't want my family to know that something's not right, So
what in the interim after that, what happens to you?
As far as like my symptoms and stuff,
like
it just gets,
your mental state. What are you self-medicating? What are you doing?
I probably was drinking all the time. Like
probably. You said probably like you're not 100% sure.
Yeah.
It's true. No, I mean I drank. Like I used to be just a normal social drinker. But I drank, I did anything to avoid what was happening. But I would go to work every day, do my job, get home, and just pass out. Like I was so overwhelmed with what was happening to my head and emotionally and everything that by the time I got home from work, like I was just non-existent at home anymore. Like I passed out on the couch until somebody forced me to go to bed, and then I'd wake up and do it all over again.
Mm-hmm. So do you go to your department and do you tell them what the fuck the problem is, or do you just?
So my surgeon at the time, she knew something was wrong. Like she knew, I don't know that she knew the extent of like all the emotional issues I was having. I don't even know that I shared that right away with anybody. But mostly because I don't think I even understood what was happening. Like I didn't realize I was depressed. I didn't realize
Brian shaking
I was
his head.
isolated. I didn't realize I had never had anxiety before. I didn't know I was having anxiety issues. All I knew was my head wouldn't fucking cool down. Like it was just blowing up all the time. And so, and I know, and she was aware of that because she would have me come in during my shift and just like ice my head and stuff. So like people knew something wasn't right with me. Nobody knew exactly what it was, but I didn't at the time know what was wrong either. The biggest thing was the headaches for me. And at the time it was just like, I couldn't get my heart rate below like 110. My resting heart rate just never went down. And so that was what I felt. And then, so I did go to my primary care doctor though. And she was like, yeah, no, this is anxiety. And this is all work related stuff from whatever this lady's doing. And so that's when I went and told Shelly, and I'm like, hey, so this is what the primary care doctor said. And she was like, yeah, well, let's just reschedule this appointment. You know?
Oh, hot potato. She don't want to touch it.
Right. And what upset me the most was my teammates were getting letters from her while she's canceling appointments because she can't meet with me, saying, hey, I'm available if you guys need to be seen. Like, just call me. I can get you in anytime. So she's offering services, but completely like just staying away from me now.
Fucked up situation all the way around.
Yep.
So do you end up retiring?
So a friend of mine who had retired medically earlier that year, apparently people were talking. Like I didn't realize how many people were talking or what people knew, but people were talking. He had already been retired and gone. And one day I was at a call, and he just sent me a text like, "Hey, V, I heard you're going through some shit. What's going on?" And I was like, "Yes, I totally am." And I told him, and he was like, "Yes, this is what you have." Like, he's like, "You need to go see a real
It's
doctor."
not the sad.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was just like, "Hey, I'm going to hook you up with my doctor. I know this group pistol. Like, I want you to go with me. Like, you need to get help and stuff." And I was like, finally, like, no one fucking was doing anything. Like, work people didn't, like, nobody, I think, in my chain of command besides my sergeant even knew I had continued seeing that contracted psychologist beyond that first appointment. So I don't know how she was getting paid or what documentation they were requiring from her or whatever, but nobody even knew that I was seeing her. And so when I filed my workers' comp claim, everybody thought I filed it based on the JT Redding incident from 3.5 years before that. And they were like, I had heard from people that chain of command people were saying like, "Oh yeah, no, that she'll never get approved because that was so long ago, and she signed this paper 3 years ago saying she's not going to file."
Yeah, so now they're
anything.
trying to screw her with what she signed because she was being.
So I ended up having to get an attorney, and ultimately my claim was accepted, but that was on the basis that this contracted psychologist fucked me up. She started what happened.
She opened the can of fucking worms.
Right, and so that's kind of where mine went. But I did leave. I left almost a year later. I just bounced.
So did you get a medical retirement?
No, I didn't. I didn't even try. Like, I basically just wanted out of there. I thought if I just could run fast enough and far enough away from it, everything would be better.
Was it?
No.
No?
No, not at all.
It didn't work out in that way.
No, not at all.
So that the way your friend approached you after he found out what you really had, that's the kind of support that we hope for,
Right.
As police officers, we thought, hey, the PD is going to have our back. They're going to take care of us. And you think that they're going to jump through hoops to just take care of their people, which is not what happened. That wasn't my experience. That's not her experience. And there's several people in our department who that wasn't their experience. And when I hear that someone actually reached out to her and gave her the correct resources with good doctors, that's how it should be. It should be that like that in every department.
So with that being said, looking back, would you have changed anything from your original call on that day? I guess is my question. Like, would you have reached out to her faster, or would you have reached out to him faster, or would you have tried to get together and talk collectively as what the issues were? Because I know Veronica said that she really didn't have. Sounds like you were just outrunning the dragon is all you were doing because you were fucked up, and you successfully did it.
Right.
But Brian's spiraling out of control, and he's talking to the same person that's talking to you. So would you had a doctor that worked at the time, right? No. So you still were fucked.
Yeah, they sent me to see the doctor who's not good at her job.
Right. Same. So
that was my experience.
So even if
her experience, which was his experience, and so I didn't, you have this stigma in your head that talking to a psychologist is going to be like, hey, punch a pillow or
hug a bear.
You have that thing in your head thinking that that's how it's going to be. And then when you show up and that's what you get, and after 3 or 4 visits, you're like, I've got nothing out of this.
Right.
So if I could go back and wake myself up, I would say, this doctor's not the right one.
Well, I don't think we would anyways, because we don't have anything to gauge it on. None of us, when we go through the process, I mean, we're all pretty sane people, and I don't think we have anything to compare it against. But I think in this situation, even as we learn through like pistol and stuff, when we start vetting doctors and stuff, you ask them, hey, Veronica, how was that doctor? Well, it was really good. Or, that doctor was a piece of shit. But at that time, you all had the same piece of shit doctor.
Right.
Yeah. And we all told each other
it's a piece of shit doctor.
But we didn't know any different.
Right. So I can see where that conversation doesn't take place.
But I think too, like, without personally knowing that he's messed up, I wouldn't know what to say. Because I think as a person and as a squad mate to my other friends, like, I think that, like, I was easily approachable, and I feel like a lot of them did share with me when there was stuff going on, but none of it ever, looking back now, I think it all started with work shit that caused all these problems that they were having in their personal lives. But so they were able to share those things, but we never talked about like, oh, that, like, you joke about, unfortunately, you joke about the crime scenes and stuff. Like, that's your way. Oh, I'm freaking starving. Can we go to lunch now?
Yep.
Like, you don't talk emotional stuff that we all have in common. Like, you know, like, it just, I don't know. And I think some of the things that I think about is that I remember, like, going through in the academy is hearing the instructors and such say things like, oh, you're going to see all these dead people. If you can't look at them and be okay, you shouldn't be here. Like, I remember hearing things like that a lot. So you get in your mind, like, I have to be able to handle this. I have to be able to do this. If I can't be around this dead body, if I can't deal with this dead baby, like, this isn't the job for me. And then, you know, and nobody wants to have that doubt in their mind that they are incapable of doing their job. And so I think you just don't let it get to that point because you're so trained that this is what you're supposed to be able to do. Like, this is why we're cops. We should be able to handle this without any kind of issues. And so I mean, I don't know that I would have done anything different with Brian because I didn't know. But if I had known what the problem was, then maybe. But like, if we aren't sharing our own issues, then nobody's going to reach out to you, you know? Like, I was very obviously different after dealing with that second doctor. Like, I used to be like very positive, very peppy, like very social, and I've flipped a complete switch. I was very negative. Like, I feel like I became that person nobody wanted to be around because I was just so negative, so bitchy, like, so I
You were just a salty veteran officer.
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly what I was. Like, I hated everything and everyone, the system, the rules, like everything that was happening at the department. Like, I just was disgruntled over everything is what I appeared to be to people. Like, I don't think anybody realized really that I was at home drinking myself to sleep, or that I would find myself laying on the bathroom floor feeling like I don't want to be here anymore because I'm worthless now. Like, I'm not a good mom, I'm not a good employee, I'm not a good cop. Like, I cannot do anything anymore. So why should I even be here? Like, nobody at work knew those things were happening to me. Like, they just knew I was bitter and angry now. And so instead of like, hey V, what's going on? Like, they were just like, stay away from V, you know, like, she's fucked up right now. But it wasn't like I was fucked up because I was having mental health issues because of the job. I was just, like you said, that salty veteran officer.
Right.
Now.
Well, and meanwhile, this motherfucker over here, Brian, is fucking struggling the same way you are. He's just dealing with it a different way.
Well,
and
it also goes back to what we talked about, the SADs, you know, like, you have these officers that are just eating their own. Mm-hmm. What if you hear that rumor going around? Are you going to pipe up and say that you have anxiety, or are you going to pipe up and say,
well, it should be the angries, not the SADs,
right.
because we're fucking angry.
Yeah,
but people were leaving because they had the SADs.
They were sad for whatever.
Right.
For whatever call they were on.
Whatever
like,
they call it, whatever department, whatever the person calls it, it doesn't matter. It's a stigma that exists in police departments where people don't want to get help. They don't want to look weak in front of their peers because they're going to get eaten alive.
Right.
And that's not how it should be. It shouldn't be that way. And you keep talking about, well, why didn't you reach out to her? Why didn't she reach out to you? Because you don't do that. The culture doesn't allow it.
Right.
I mean, I agree with you to some extent.
Yeah, but you have hindsight. You're looking back.
No, I'm saying, what I was going to say is, even on my squad, when I was on the gang squad, one of our partners was struggling. We knew he was struggling, and we isolated him, and we protected him. We didn't say, like, you know, he has a SADS. It was a good shoot, and we isolated him and we took care of him. We made sure he was taken care of. The problem is that we just didn't know what kind of care he needed. Right. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? So even on my department, some of the guys that had been involved in multiple shootings, we knew to take care of them. We just didn't take care of them the right way. Mm-hmm. You know, because if you have somebody that's been involved in multiple shootings or multiple homicides, in my department, we would take care of you, but we're not set up that way. we're not trained to take care of at that level. We didn't make fun of him, but we made sure that if he ever, like, he'd show up to work and he'd be like, I don't want to be here. And we'd be like, just sit in the corner and write a search warrant. We'd make his job easy because we knew he was fucked up.
Did you talk about how he felt? Were you guys talking about how he was feeling or what he was personally going through? Or did you just know something wasn't
No,
okay
we would ask him and we knew. I mean, but we didn't really have to ask him because we were on that scene and we knew it was a fuck scene to begin with. The problem is we're not fucking doctors. We're not mental health professionals. So you know what my response is? Hey, let's go to choir practice after work.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right? That's my therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have EMDR. My therapy is, so if you were in my department and that happened, I would just simply say, hey, Brian, Veronica, after work, we're hitting choir practice. That's therapy for us. The
By
wrong
that,
therapy.
You mean
drinking. Yeah, drinking.
For those who don't who don't speak your language.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, we would still make sure that they had someone around them, someone to talk to. The problem is that we're not equipped that way. We're not equipped to tell you what you're dealing with. Hypervigilance, suicidal thoughts, intrusive thoughts, anxiety, anger. So we're making do with what we have. Mm-hmm. And in my department, that's how we dealt with it. Like, so my partner was struggling with the shooting he was involved in. And we're like, all right, he's struggling. And we know why. We didn't make fun of him. We just made sure that he had a cushiest job as possible to do the job because we didn't want him to retire. We wanted him to get better. The problem was the department, like Veronica said, like your department says, oh, we got you. That's a bunch of fucking bullshit. We'll take care of you. And then they send you to some fuck psychologist or whatever. But we still were insulating that person and isolating him basically. So when other squads would be like, well, why isn't so-and-so out? We're like, oh, he's writing us a search warrant. And we literally created a position for this officer where we would call out on the streets and say, we're going to write a search warrant on this house and give them the, when you write a search warrant, you got to give a description of the house and the letters and stuff. And he would write it for us. We made his job very easy. And maybe we were enabling him to just get worse. We don't know, but we're not fucking mental health professionals. But when I hear stories like this, you really didn't have a chance. Like, you're set up for failure when your department says, oh, don't sign that fucking work comp. We'll take care of you. And you waive those rights to be able to do that.
To get help. They're
setting you up for failure. I mean, I know that there's things in place and maybe there are departments that take care of their own. But in Arizona, they just don't take care of us. And it's sad to see that even in this particular time where you have two officers involved in the exact same critical incident who saw the exact same thing and are fucked up because of it. And the simple fact is that one either held on just a little longer or went a different road, or you, on the other hand, Veronica, went a different way and you didn't get the help you needed because of that. Like, you had to just step away from the job. You're not the only officer. Some of the officers that come into pistol are like, no, I just walked away from my pension. And trust me, there were many times during my critical incident that I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'll just sign away and cash me out because I can't deal with the hurdles you give me.
Right. And that was essentially why I did what I did, because I was every IME, every deposition, like, it was just starting over, and I would feel like, okay, I think I'm getting better, I think I'm doing better, and then it was like, oh, here, workers' comp is saying you have to do this again, and it was like I'd have to start over, and it's like trying to climb out of that hole each time, and it never got any better. And like he mentioned, like, I didn't feel like I had any support from anybody that I worked with, like nobody ever said anything, not anybody in my chain of command. Like, nobody even said, hey, how are you, when I would come back to work after several months being gone or anything. Like, everyone just acted like
nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
Yeah. Like, everything's fine.
Which is how they treated the initial incident, too. We came back to work and it was like nothing happened.
The next day was just reading briefing notes and go forward.
Yeah, it was like nothing ever happened.
What a fuck system.
Well, I do want to talk a little bit about cops eating their own, because I have a personal experience that I don't know if I've shared, but I want to share it. Another one of the guys who was on this murder-suicide with us, he was one of the first ones to retire for mental health. And he's an awesome guy, and I trust him with my life. He's a friend, and I would go through a door at any time with him. But he disappeared for a while, and it was kind of like Veronica, where he just disappeared and no one knows where he went. And I happened to run into him, and I said, "Hey man, what happened to you? What's going on?" And he said, "Well, I'm having these issues." And he started spelling out his PTSD. And I was on the call with the guy. I know what he feels like. And as he's explaining these symptoms of PTSD that he has, I can relate to every single one of them. I have them.
Yeah.
And so here I am. He's telling me about it. I can relate. We were on the same call together. But I turn and I look at him, and I didn't say it to him, but I was thinking in my head, he's got to be exaggerating. I have the same symptoms. I'm on duty. I'm in patrol. I'm in full uniform on my shift, and he's telling me about his symptoms. Even though I have the same symptoms, in my brain, I'm saying he's got to be exaggerating. There's no way that he
But you had the exact same symptoms he was spelling out.
Yes. And so here I am, suffering the same, been on the same calls with him, and I'm that guy. I'm that guy saying he's got to be faking it. It can't be that bad. And then it wasn't till, I don't know, a couple months later when I hit rock bottom, and I thought to myself, holy crap, everything he said is true, and it's happening to me right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And I couldn't believe it. And I looked back at myself with shame, because I was, in my own head, I'm thinking he's got to be exaggerating. And cops all around the world say he's got to be exaggerating, because you don't want to ever believe that one of your squad mates or one of your peers has that, or that could be real, you know? And so that was an embarrassing thing for me to think that. I mean, it's crazy. I look back now and I'm like, I was suffering just like him, but I doubted him.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's the culture. It's ingrained in every single one of us, and it shouldn't be. We should give each other the benefit of the doubt and pull them up, you know?
Well, because I don't, and I think that's a good point, because I'll tell you, having been around you guys long enough, nobody in this room wanted to retire.
Right.
That was never a goal of ours, was to say, let's only go 15 years into our career and fucking call it a day.
Right.
And I think that's probably par for the course for everybody. So you actually being able to say that, you know, I need help. And I see it happening more and more now. Some of these officers are going to start asking for help. They need to get them the help that they need, the correct help that they need, and the correct treatment that they need. So wrapping up, we know what happened to Brian, but Veronica, you left, and now what do you do?
I'm a real estate agent.
So if you're in Arizona, particularly what? Santan Valley? Is that where you're?
No, I don't live out there. I work generally all of East Valley, but I'll do anywhere. Like we've sold houses in Buckeye, Tolleson, Phoenix, Scottsdale. Like we work all over the valley.
What's the name of the company?
We work under Results Realty.
All right. So look out for Veronica Butler. When you guys are out, check her out. And you guys do a podcast, right? Because I've stalked you on Facebook.
We have a radio show that we do.
What is the name of the radio show? You don't know? Yeah, that's horrible.
The Real Estate Power Hour. I believe it's, I don't want to say the name of the radio station off the hand right now, because I will mess it up. We've recently switched radio stations.
All right. Well, but Veronica Butler and your company, check it out. And I appreciate you guys coming in. I know Brian was probably a little bit nervous because he was probably going to have to go down that road again, but.
No, I'm good.
You good?
Yeah.
And I appreciate you chopping it up with us, having some strong whiskey with us. We'll do it again. If Brian, I know you always say this at the end, but if you have anything you want us to talk about, leave us a comment at the bottom. Any one of us in this room, you can leave a comment for. We can get it to them, whether it's Veronica, Brian, me. We'll answer the questions, and we'll see you again on the next one to see what a kind of fucked up shit that we have to go through as cops.
Well, another thing is, if you're struggling with symptoms of PTSD or acute stress, or you're not sleeping, or you have anxiety, or whatever things you're going through, and you just feel like you have nowhere to turn, you can reach out to us. There is help out there. Suicide is not the answer. Right.
And drinking yourself to death is not the answer.
Right. And if you're listening to this and you're serving as a police officer right now, if you see someone who is down and out, lift them up. Do what you can do to look out for each other and really live up to that thin blue line which people talk about. Don't step on each other, because it doesn't help.
And at the very least, because you don't know what to say, like you guys said, just say, hey, there's something out there like Pistol, right?
Right.
Because I think that you said that helped you when he said, hey,
yeah, I mean,
come down
that's
here.
all it was like, hey, I'll hook you up with this doctor that I have, and there's this group called Pistol. Like, you just need to go and find out that you're not fucking abnormal. Like, this is a very normal
You're actually
thing
more normal than you think.
Right. And that's all it was. I mean, just getting the education to know that what I was experiencing was just not from another planet. Like, I was normal and going through shit that a lot of other guys have been going through.
All right. I'll see you guys on the next one, yeah?
Yep.
All right.